Hi folks, with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of Pakistani and Indian, I mean, you could include Chinese, but in this instance, Pakistani and Indian middlemen, corrupt agents, call it what you like, that are bringing supposedly skilled workers from Pakistan and India into the West. Now, there are millions of Pakistanis and Indians being sort of funneled into the West, supposedly skilled migrants to fill skilled positions that cannot be filled in the West. So now the purpose of all these skilled migration things, whether it be in Australia, now the Australian government forever screams, as indeed does the business lobby, we're short on skills, we don't have the skills, we need skills. And funnily enough, the only places in the world where these skilled geniuses exist is in third world, dirt poor, basket case countries, which rather gives the game away, I think, as to what's going on here. I mean, if they're saying we're shortage on skills, we've got to go to in Australia, we've got to go to America or Britain or somewhere, you go, okay. But you've got to go to some of the poorest countries in the world to supposedly find these skills. I mean, that's obviously nonsense. Now, I've put a link to an article, a news article, in the description here of the vid, so have a little look at that. But the basic architecture of the scam is that these Pakistani dudes in the US have been charged, but to run the scam, and I'll simplify this a little bit, but to run the scam, they post adverts in job vacant adverts, help wanted type adverts online for jobs that don't exist. They also deliberately put in, it's either vague or they want exceptional qualifications for a low salary, or so they'll put in. So anyway, they either don't get any responses and the job doesn't exist anyway. It's a fake advert for non-existent jobs, but it gives them the pretext to be able to go to the US Department of Labor, whoever it is. They got to get sign off here, immigration, and say, look, we advertised here for 6 weeks. Look, and we didn't get anybody going. We got to go to some dirt poor third world shithole country to get these skills that are unavailable in the United States. Now, it's obviously a scam. I don't know how they get the sign offs. Maybe they're bribing someone in immigration. Who knows? Now, remember, for those of you who haven't been to India and Pakistan, you can't take a shit in those countries without having to bribe somebody. Their view of the world is that anything and everything worthwhile happens by bribery. That they have no concept of a clean, honest way of doing business, prudential standards. And so they don't even know what that means. They can't even comprehend it, and they can't even comprehend a high trust society. Their society is amongst the lowest trust societies in the world. And they can't even comprehend what a high trust society is or how it came to be that way. Now, when they come to places in the West that are high trust, all they see is a lot of gullible people that can be cheated and cheated out of their money and out of everything, cheated out of their underwear, for goodness sake. So they don't see it as trust. They see it as naivety and gullibility of, oh, you're so gullible, I'll take everything from you. They don't. The idea of how wealth is created via high trust, they can't comprehend it, that they just don't know whatever that even means. So anyway, I don't know if this applies directly to these Pakistanis who were charged in the US, but they run these adverts, they get them, and then they go over to Pakistan and they effectively auction off to the highest bidder. Okay, we can fix somebody up with a green card here. Don't worry about what you can or can't do. Don't worry about your skills. We'll fraudulently fake all the paperwork. We'll take care of all that. And they just sell effectively just the green card to the US or a work visa to Australia or Britain. That doesn't matter. They sell it to the highest bidder. Now you need to sort of understand this, that there are more than 2 billion with a B. More than 2 billion people in the Indian subcontinent. If you include Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. So it's 2 billion. Now, of those, 1.5, 1.6 billion plus are gagging to get the fuck out of Pakistan and India. That they will do they will bribe anybody, suck anything in order to get out of and come to the rich white West. That's their dream. That's their fantasy. That's their determination. Again, they'll bribe anybody they have to. So when these Pakistani guys say, okay, we can arrange 10 green cards, working visas for the United States, they're killed in the rush. And there are people who pay serious money to them to arrange this. So they can collect $50,000 more. Entire villages, rural villages, will all pool their money together, sell whatever they've got to sell, and pull their money to just try and get just one of their number into the US, because the fantasy that they exist in is, well, we get one of our number in, somebody from the village in, some Pakistani or Indian, and then the whole village will be able to come over, and also the parents or family of the person that manages to get into the US then becomes a local god. Everyone is crawling and sucking up to them and begging them for favors. So now the parents are they're very important, and they're privileged people, demigods in the village. And this is something that everyone in the subcontinent wants. My son's gone to Australia, my daughter's in America, and that makes you a demigod in these places. And so everybody will, you'll be able to hold court and issue orders and commands. The people in the village will bow and scrape to you as you walk by. And so this is hugely sought after. I mean, the prestige of having a relative in a first world country is just off the charts. So this is how it happens. Now, Western governments have, the whole system of skilled migration is very much a trust and honesty system. So the Indian or the Pakistani just says, yeah, I'm an expert computer coder or programmer. I'm a genius. Oh yeah, I've got 100 degrees, 1,000 degrees, and there's no real checking. There's no. And the people that are tasked with checking it, if there are any, are usually other Pakistanis or Indians. And so they don't check it. They just take a bribe. Okay, how much do you want to get to America? Should I check on your bona fides? Do you really have a triple PhD in computer science? They each know that he doesn't. It's all bullshit. So he'll just slip him a few $1,000 to say, just tick the box in the forms. Yep, I've verified he's got 1,000 degrees in computer science or whatever the alleged qualification is. And hey presto, the guy's going to America or somewhere in a nice rich white country. These people don't want to go to poor countries; they want to go to rich white countries, and then try and make the rich white countries dirt poor like their countries are. But they don't think that far ahead. Nor do they comprehend how wealth is created. They just don't know. So they then get their green card or working visa to Australia, whatever it might be. They get that, and then they arrive, and then they just disappear into the woodwork, doing. Now they also, a lot of them have to pay kickbacks to the agents that got them in there. So there's all sorts of under the table payments. Typically, they're organised with other Indians or Pakistanis, so they can be hidden. So the person's got to pay some sort of kickback to the agent that managed to fraudulently get them into the United States. Then they'll be put into say some IT labour hire firm, something like that, and then they'll be assigned to some government project where no one checks on what they know or what they can do or if they're doing anything. But they get paid a salary, a scam salary, and then some of that has to be kicked back to the labour hire firm and so on. So it's a massive fraud and a scam from beginning to end. And Western governments have been strangely reluctant, or maybe understandably, given the globalist project, reluctant to clamp down on these things. It's brazen and blatant fraud on a grand scale, and yet no one's touching. So there are millions. I mean, across the whole West, that there would easily be 10 plus million Pakistanis and Indians working fraudulently, qualifications they don't have. the reasons they're being brought out to the West don't exist. The corrupt payments, the fraudulent documents, the skills they're supposed to have that they don't have, and the list goes on and on. Now, the Trump administration appears to, at least at the beginning, working to crack down on this. If they want to offer Tacitus today a gig doing that, I will zealously and energetically pursue this, but in the US or anywhere else. But the point of it, I came across this quite early when the first tranche of Indians, and I've mentioned this in other videos, the first tranche of Indians started to appear in Australia. They all had these incredible qualifications, PhDs in this and double PhDs in that. And they were all the first tranche were all Brahmins, and so they were very they're quite cultured, and they're in a classic sort of educational sense, they're quite cultured and well mannered, and they come from wealthy families. Their families all have monopoly businesses in regions and districts all around India, and so they're quite well to do. They never have to worry about money. They always have hundreds of servants to run around and cater for their every whim, and the servants are treated like house animals. They're allowed to sleep on the floor at night and eat the scraps off the table of the Brahmins. It's that sort of thing. Anyway, they arrive in Australia, and given their privileged sort of status in India, I even wonder sometimes, why do you come here when you live? And some of them would show pictures of the houses that they claim at least they lived in, and some of them were quite palatial. And yes, and we have 110 servants, and what do they all do? If it's a big place, there's a lot of work to be done in the garden. They just have people walking up and down the pathway, sweeping it all day. Do they need to be swept? Well, no, but the labour's almost cost nothing. The person's allowed to sleep in the cellar and again eat the scraps off there, and they'll work all day doing a bullshit job. So I know these jobs, very few of the jobs actually exist. As a job requires 20 people will do it, which is very India and very third world. So anyway, assuming what they claim their living conditions were, they come to Australia. I didn't quite understand why they would, but it seemed to be some sort of badge of honour. I'm going to a white man's country, and I'm a heavy hitter. I'm a big man in the white man's country. It seems to be some sort of quite pointless bragging rights that they were pursuing rather than anything meaningful. Nonetheless, so the Indians were all arriving then, and the company that I was working for at the time, the board of directors got sucked in by the business newspapers and business press. This is sort of just on the cusp of the internet beginning to appear, and they kept giving me a hard time at the meetings, saying, "Well, Billy Bob, why aren't you hiring lots of these Indians? They're all geniuses, and they're all cheap." And now, the little bit I knew at the time, I thought, well, no, they're not geniuses. They're as lazy as fuck, and they're kind of cheap. But if the people, even if you pay them half as much as you did a productive person, but they do nothing, then they're not cheap. Anyway, they pestered me so much, I sort of had to go down that path. So the first Indians employed, they claimed that, like this first guy, I think he had a PhD, or supposedly a PhD in computer science, and he was a genius at cutting computer code and writing software, and all, he claimed to have all this sort of thing. And again, nice guy. He was cultured and quite sophisticated. If you were talking about the the works of Socrates or something like that, he was quite cultured like that. And so he didn't do any work though, and he had a very nice suit, very sharp suit, immaculately presented, quite a lot of jewelry, but he wasn't doing any work. So I sort of started up the pressure a bit, saying, okay, well, and he would bluster and carry on and wave his hands all around and claim that he was being unfairly treated and this sort of thing. So just give him time, and he would stack papers high on his desk and say, look at all this work, look at all this work I have to do, look at it. and he'd point to it, and so I wasn't buying it, but I thought, okay, I'll give you a bit more time. And then it came to he didn't. I do not accept that you can tell me what to do. Well, no, I'm your boss, buddy. Yes, I am going to tell you what to do. And so he then came out with this thing that, given he was of such a high social standing, and he gave some examples. The senior lecturer at the university that he partied at, I don't think he studied at it, would tremble in fear as he came around because his family was so influential and so on. And so he said, well, look, you don't come from a high caste, so referring to me, so you can't tell me what to do because your social standing isn't high enough to. No, buddy. You're not in India anymore. You're being paid to do a job. You have to do that job. That's the gig. Now you've accepted the job. You've claimed to have all this expertise. I need to see it. I need to see some demonstration of it because you've done nothing so far. So it got down to the point where, look, you have to cut a line of code in front of me right now. No more bluster. I'm not taking any more nonsense right now. He couldn't. And then he fessed. Then at that point, when the gig was up, he fessed up, saying, well, actually, he doesn't have a degree or a PhD or any qualification in computer science. And he seemed quite mystified as to why I expected him to actually do his work. He was, well, don't you realize I'm an important person from the highest social caste and echelon and position in society. I'm an aristocrat. You can't expect me to do work. I mean, how demeaning. You grubby little fuck expecting me to do work. And so that was his thing. And he saw no problem with it. It's okay. Well, if I said I had a triple PhD in computer science and you believed it, that's your problem, not mine. Well, don't you think you get some responsibility by telling the lies in the first? Oh, no. I mean, I come from a high side. I'm allowed to tell lies. And anyway, well, what business is it yours to question me? And and this is the first sort of tranche of Indians that came in. Now, I quite, again, on just a purely social, personal level, as a cultured discussion about Socrates, I was quite, I didn't mind them. They seemed nice enough. But in terms of doing work, they had no problem with telling the most outrageous lies. Now, beyond that, I sort of looked into, well, how did you get to Australia? And so this is where it came up, that they were using these corrupt Indian agents who were arranging all the documents and because they come from a rich family, they can slip them a few $1,000 and they'll just take it. They'll just put on the form. So Australia says, oh, we've got a shortage of, say, computer programmers or whatever it might be. Then they just go, right, yep, this guy's a computer programmer. He's got 100 PhDs. Fills out the paperwork. That then goes to the local Indian agent that then pushes it through, and so they get all this corrupt both ends. They get all this corrupt stuff going both ways, and so they're able to get into the country, then go to some recruitment agency or labour hire firm, which is also run by Indians. And then the whole scam sort of goes the full circle. And this is how it happens. This is how it works. So, and this is something that happened ages ago. Now, it needs to be clamped down on because, again, billions of people want to get out. And the Indians have got a very coordinated messaging and propaganda system. Wherever I go now, there's wherever it is that they've got their instructions. They must penetrate every white enclave. And there was some debating society I went to. It was all white, but then along comes an Indian who's just arrived in Australia, and they've got a tight script on this. It was always my dream. It was my dream since I was a little girl. It was my dream to come to Australia. It's my dream. And so they talk about how it was always been their dream since I was a little girl. I dreamed since I was old enough, and so. But everywhere you go, that's exact same line is being used. But billions of people want to go to the subcontinent to the west, and they are very, very focused and committed on it. And so the scams around skilled work visas are being gamed, corrupted, subverted in every which way. And it's good to see that the Trump administration is finally clamping down on this. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.